You probably don't have a problem playing video games or scrolling through social media on your phone. In fact, I have no doubt you could sit in front of a screen and do both of those activities for hours without breaking your concentration. But what about half an hour of studying? Oof. How about working on your side hustle for another hour? Doesn't sound too appealing, does it? So, why is it so easy to lose yourself in one activity, but nearly impossible to focus on another? The answer lies in a single brain chemical, dopamine, and understanding it might just change the way you approach your daily life. Dopamine is often called the pleasure molecule, but that's only part of the story. It's not about feeling good, it's about wanting more. Think about it. When you're about to eat your favorite snack or open a text message, you feel a rush of excitement. That's dopamine at work. It's the reason you crave rewards, whether it's a like on Instagram, a win in a video game, or even a bite of chocolate. But here's the twist. Dopamine doesn't care if the reward is good for you. It just wants you to keep chasing. To understand how powerful dopamine is, let's talk about a shocking experiment with rats. Scientists implanted electrodes in their brains, stimulating their reward system every time they pulled a lever. The result? The rats became obsessed. They pulled the lever for hours, ignoring food, sleep, and even their basic survival instincts. But when scientists blocked dopamine, the rats lost all motivation. They wouldn't eat or drink unless food was placed directly in their mouths. Sound familiar? It's a stark reminder of how dopamine controls our drive to act. Now, let's bring this back to you. Every time you scroll social media, play a video game, or even check your phone, your brain releases dopamine. Why? Because you're anticipating a reward, a like, a notification, or a win. But here's the catch. Your brain doesn't distinguish between healthy and unhealthy rewards. It just craves more. That's why it's so hard to put down your phone and pick up a book. One gives you instant dopamine, the other doesn't. Here's where things get dangerous. In today's world, we're constantly bombarded with high dopamine activities. Social media, video games, streaming services, they're all designed to keep you hooked. And the more you indulge, the more your brain craves. But there's a price to pay. Over time, your brain adapts to this dopamine flood, and that's where the real problem begins. Your body loves balance. It's called homeostasis. When you're cold, you shiver to warm up. When you're hot, you sweat to cool down. But this balance also applies to dopamine. If you constantly flood your brain with high dopamine activities, your brain downregulates its receptors. In other words, it becomes less sensitive to dopamine. What used to excite you no longer does, and you need more stimulation to feel the same rush. This is dopamine tolerance, and it's why normal life starts to feel boring. When your dopamine tolerance gets too high, low dopamine activities like studying, exercising, or working feel unbearable. They don't give you the same instant gratification, so your brain avoids them. This is why drug addicts struggle to enjoy normal life. Their brains are so used to artificial dopamine spikes that everything else feels dull. But it's not just addicts. Anyone addicted to social media, video games, or even junk food experiences the same thing. So, what's the solution? It's called a dopamine detox. The idea is simple. Take a break from high dopamine activities to reset your brain. No social media, no video games, no junk food. Just quiet, low-stimulation activities like reading, walking, or journaling. It's not easy, but over time, your dopamine receptors recover. Suddenly, the things you used to avoid become more appealing. You regain your motivation and focus. It's like hitting the reset button on your brain. Dopamine is a double-edged sword. It drives us to achieve, but it can also trap us in cycles of instant gratification. The question is, are you controlling your dopamine, or is it controlling you? What would happen if you took a step back from the high dopamine world and rediscovered the joy of simplicity? Think about it, and maybe, just maybe, it's time for a reset.